Socotra is a unique island. An island that remained isolated from the world until 2002, when a small airport was built for the first time. With its landscape, Socotra has stimulated over the centuries the imagination of many travelers, with its peculiar umbrella-shaped trees, the Socotra dragon trees. According to one of the old local stories, the first seed of dragon tree sprouted in the exact spot where two brothers, Darsa and Sama, chose to fight to death. That's a story that kinda reminds us of Cain and Abel in the Bible. In Arabic, this peculiar kind of tree is known as the blood of the two brothers. For centuries, the islanders have used the reddish sap of this tree as an ointment with magical properties. And it's no coincidence that the dragon tree has become, over time, the most recognizable symbol of this island. A place endowed with a biodiversity more alien than terrestrial. Socotra is an island blessed with more than 700 endemic species of flora and fauna, unique in their kind, and thanks to which in 2008 UNESCO appointed the island a World Heritage Site to be preserved and protected. Nature is the true master of Socotra, a beauty that has always inspired me to get interested in the events of this island, so much so that I hope one day to be able to visit it, although I don't see that as a feasible thing at the moment. Bizarre plants, untouched and tremendously fascinating shores, and unspoiled highlands. For many, Socotra is a piece of paradise, but for others it's just a barren land to be exploited. Located in the Indian Ocean, in a position which makes it geographically part of the African continent, Socotra is closer to Somalia than to Yemen. From the Somali coast, the island is about 240 kilometers away, while from the Yemeni coast it's more than double. This distance has contributed in large part to the isolation and sense of mystery that Arab, Persian and African sailors felt about such a remote island. The archipelago of Socotra is formed by three other small strips of land: Abd al-Khuri, Darsa and Sama. The 6,000 inhabitants living on the island have always relied on fishing and on the cultivation of date palms. And despite belonging politically to Yemen since 1999, the islanders, half Shiite and half Sunni, boast their own culture and a different language, Socotri, a Semitic language even older than Arabic and whose origin is still an arcane mystery. Up to this day, Socotra finds itself embroiled in a civil war that has been ravaging Yemen since 2015. Socotra became the epicenter of a power struggle between the Houthi rebels and the central government, but it became also the place of another secondary conflict, the one between the United Arab Emirates and the Yemeni government of Mansur Hadi. The situation in Yemen has been tragic for over 6 years, to be exact, since Hadi was forced by Shiite rebels belonging to the Ansar Allah group, better known as Houthi, to resign from its presidency, abandon the capital Sana'a and leave it under the control of the rebels. The war in Yemen is better known as a proxy war, a conflict where the real actors are quite different from those facing each other on the battlefield. Under the surface, Yemen is actually disputed on one side by the Saudis, supported by the rest of the Gulf countries and the US, which approved the official government of Hadi, and on the other side there's Iran, which, in historical contrast to the Saudi monarchy, supports the rebellion of the Houthis, seeing it as a possibility to expand its sphere of influence directly in the Arabian Peninsula. We'll talk more about the war in Yemen in another video. This is not the case, I'll just focus now on Socotra. Known as the jewel of the Gulf of Aden, Socotra is situated off the Horn of Africa, overlooking the Bab El-Mandeb Strait, which connects the Red Sea to both the Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Sea. The tensions surrounding Socotra are many. Every day, more than 3 million oil barrels travel from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean. Ships on this route travel west across the Arabian Sea into the Gulf of Aden, then turn north, entering the Red Sea through the narrow Bab El-Mandeb passage, before going up to the Suez Canal. The Socotra archipelago occupies a critical position on the route to Bab El-Mandeb. Socotra's central location also makes it an ideal launching point for interdicting pirates and smugglers. It protects the trade routes and all the fishing communities along the Horn of Africa and the southern coast of Yemen. From Iran to Somalia and from Eritrea to Qatar and India, for years international and regional powers have struggled to establish bases around the Horn of Africa. To have a strategic advantage over all these nations are the United Arab Emirates, which since 2018 have maintained a military presence on the island to support the CTS, which is the Southern Transitional Council, an entity whose purpose is to achieve the separation of South Yemen from the rest of the nation. The Emirates' presence, though, has only increased divisions on the island. Socotra's governor, Ramzi Marous has always rejected the presence of the CTS, being in his eyes a clear threat to his figure. On the other hand, however, many islanders are polarized on the choice to adopt, to support the Transnational Council of the South, and therefore the Arab Emirates, or to refuse the interference of a foreign country in the island's affairs. Separated from food and fuel supplies since the outbreak of the war, the island was left at the mercy of its own fate. The absence of Houthi on the island couldn't grant a casus belli to intervene militarily, and so the Emirates, with the initial support of the Saudis, used the excuse of humanitarian aid to set foot on the island and secure the support of part of the population. They found the opportunity in 2015, when in the space of a few days Socotra ended up being hit by two tropical cyclones that brought destruction and further misery to the population that had already been living on less than $1 a day for decades. Masquerading it as a large-scale humanitarian intervention by the Red Crescent, Abu Dhabi deployed over 5,000 troops to the island without the coordination or approval of either the Yemeni government or the governor of Socotra. In 2018, the United Arab Emirates, under the guise of training local Yemeni forces in Socotra, reportedly began to weave a series of personal interests on the island. First of all, they did it to strengthen military connection with all their bases along the Horn of Africa, such as the Berbera base in Somaliland, the Assab naval base in Eritrea, and other military barracks in Puntland, in Somalia. From a strategic point of view, Socotra provides a vital link between these regions and would allow the Emirate Navy to conduct important security operations. In terms of contrasting piracy, the island has long been a docking base for many of the Somali pirates who operate far and wide along the Horn of Africa as far as the Omani coast. A stable presence would also allow the Emirates, and implicitly the Saudis, to keep out Iranian boats that transport arms and supplies to the Houthi rebels. In a proxy war against Iran, all of this would strengthen Saudi Arabia. In this conflict, Socotra would serve as an excellent support base from which to launch rockets against the Houthis in Yemen. The news that the Emirates use Socotra as a military base is still a matter of debate, given the logistical problems of the island, such as those dictated by the climate and by monsoons, which for 6 months of the year make operations in the area very difficult. The interest of the United Arab Emirates in Socotra has been interpreted as a challenge by Saudi Arabia. By occupying the island, the Emirates are trying to block the expansion and the regional domination of Saudi Arabia in the entire region, consolidating their presence in the triangle that at its vertices touches Aden, Socotra and the small island of Bahrain. And so the reasons that led Abu Dhabi to be guaranteed a 99-year concession by President Hadi would be mainly economic. Controlling Socotra would mean acquiring a large slice of the monopoly in the traffic of oil and gas that passes through Bab El-Mandeb, a move made in total autonomy and in contrast with both Iran and Saudi Arabia. With the occupation of Socotra, the Emirates would also be able to acquire kilometers and kilometers of Indian Ocean through the strengthening of an exclusive economic zone in the territorial waters around the island. For the Saudis, the Emirates are an alliance of convenience. It's not by chance that the Emirates are planning to annex Socotra by organizing a referendum in order to make the islanders decide whether to become officially part of the Emirates or remain at the mercy of the uncertainty of war. Feeling neglected by Hadi's central government, the Socotrians had no choice but to welcome Abu Dhabi's investments. The Emiratis have not only built basic infrastructures such as roads, hospitals and schools, but have also paid the salaries of doctors, policemen and bureaucrats, creating new opportunities for a total of 5,000 new jobs. After 2 weeks in May 2018, the Emirati troops abandoned the island. They got replaced by Saudi troops, but they still left behind officials who are working for the Khalifa Foundation of Abu Dhabi, a government-sponsored charity. For Governor Marous, however, such charitable organizations would conceal a more devious objective. That is, to buy the loyalty of Socotra residents and allow UAE traders and investors to conduct business on the island under their cover. These organizations would facilitate the purchase of land to wealthy Emiratis, despite the presence of a government decree prohibiting the sale of any land on the island. Many of these lots would belong to protected coastal areas, in which the construction of buildings and changes to the landscapes are prohibited. Yet, when buying land with prices ranging from hundreds of thousands to tens of millions of dollars, Emiratis have never hidden their goals of building private houses and tourist resorts. Emirates, and no longer Yemen, seem to have become the headquarters of the island. Witness to this are the Emirati companies, which have weekly flights between Hadibu, the capital of Socotra, and Abu Dhabi. The United Arab Emirates are also aware that Socotra may become a great catalyst for tourism. Before the civil war, the island operated a particular kind of ecotourism, respectful of the environment, which granted a small number of visas per year, especially to scientists, to facilitate their study of Socotra ecosystem. All of this may disappear with the Emirati occupation and with their plans to favor luxury resorts all over the island, just like they already did in Dubai with their artificial archipelagos. I dare to say that the objective is very simple: to transform Socotra into a Dubai 2.0. To do so, Socotra's Deputy Governor for Environment and Development, Abdul Jamel Mohammed, as well as Emirati companies, have reportedly already begun excavating several sections of the island's national park in preparation for a series of 5-star resorts. Leaving aside the contradictions of seeing 5-star hotels in villages still destroyed by monsoons and poverty, all of this has raised a lot of criticism in the island. As reported by local sources, the Emirates didn't obtain any permission from Yemen to start their construction projects. In addition to this, some reports highlighted that several endangered species, both plants and animals, have been taken from the island and resettled into the Emirates. Many Socotrians saw this move as not only a violation of the island's identity, but also as an offense against their environment, something made possible by the position of supremacy enjoyed by Emirati officials there. The possibility of the island being used as a new destination for vacationing has raised concerns related to pollution of a fragile ecosystem. And maybe this is the saddest element of the story. Also, the fact that the Emirates several months later sent troops on the island again doesn't bode well. Abu Dhabi doesn't seem willing to leave the bone, which is metaphorically the island, in the hands of the Saudis. For this is what's all about. A bone. An island that's at risk of being stripped of all its beauty for mere geopolitical and economic plots. Yemeni journalist Mohammed Al-Rumim earlier this year said, "The United Arab Emirates are not a friend of Socotra. They're only interested in colonizing it." The Emirates have always denied the accusation of neo-colonialism, but what seems more and more certain is that the Emiratis intend to keep their presence on the island with or without Yemeni approval. On the one hand, this allows the Emirates to avoid open conflicts with the Arabs and other competitors such as Israel, which seems to have an intelligence base on the island. On the other hand, it relegates the islanders to mere pawns in a geopolitical chess game, whose outcome could prove catastrophic for their traditional lifestyle and also for the island they call home. Only time will tell us which side will prevail. They say, however, that time is a gentleman, but I have serious doubts that it will be so in this case. I thank all of you for listening and keeping me company until the end. See you in the next video. Bye.